Ladies and gentlemen, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome to the show Miss Carilyn Johnson from El Paso, Texas. Carilyn, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so excited to have you on the show. You just accomplished an amazing feat, and I can't wait to talk to you about that. We're going to talk about you and your running on the USA 24-hour team, and one of my favorite topics ever, food.
Me too. Me too.
I honestly, like just a few minutes ago, I watched a YouTube video on how to make beef Wellington, because that's on the menu for Christmas dinner. And boy, let me tell you, there's a high probability that I'm going to ruin it.
You won't. You won't. You just got to be really careful and really patient. It's one of my favorite things.
Okay. So, two of the things I'm not good at: patience and being careful.
Okay. Well, it'll still taste good. How's that?
Okay. I'll give you a full report.
Okay, good.
So congratulations on accomplishing what was called Project 6240.
Thank you.
And this is something that's very personal to you. So if you could tell the audience, what is it and why did you do it?
Well, so, first we had, the beginnings of COVID. And so races were canceled. And I actually love to race because I really like people and being around people. So that was for everybody hard. And then so COVID was like March. Then in August, my mother, who I was already helping take care of, fell and broke her hip. Oh. And, at that point, trying to be in a facility of any kind was a nightmare with COVID because you couldn't be with them. And she was also already mostly deaf and blind. So it was impossible for her to be in a facility without someone in there with her.
Yeah.
So we brought her home, and I became one of her, my sister and I and my dad, we became her primary caregivers. We rotated, and it just made everything more complicated as far as scheduling and timing. But I still needed to run because, we all need to run. Those of us that are listening to this need to run. So after kind of the next year of just being a caregiver and really feeling a lot of stress and grief over what was happening, I decided I needed to have kind of a self-styled project, self-propelled project. So during all my years of really heavy training, I always did 120 miles a week minimum. And I just thought, what if I just refocus on that, because I can do it whenever I need to do it. I can walk it, I can run it, I can do whatever I need. I control when it happens. There's no racing involved. If I race, that's fine. But at that point, races still were not happening. So I just took 120 miles a week, multiplied it by 52 weeks, and came up with 6240. And I decided to post every day just for my own, I wanted it to be official so that I would do it. I needed structure, I needed commitment, and I needed something that gave me something, to kind of lift that year up. So that's how it came about.
Well, first, I'm so sorry to hear about your mom. It's never easy to see a parent go through such trying times like that.
No, it was awful.
Yeah, I think there are many of us who can absolutely just understand where you were that time and space. What's your mom's name?
Well, she actually passed away at the end of February, at the beginning, ironically at the beginning of the project, but I went ahead and stuck with it because I was just really dealing with so much grief that it helped me to kind of have something to focus on. So.
Yeah.
Marilyn. Her name was Marilyn. That's why I'm named after her, Carilyn. That's why it's spelled strange.
But the I, yes. Carilyn with an I.
Yes, yes.
Well, Marilyn, this is for you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, in years ago, my mom was diagnosed stage 4 cancer, and so I became her primary giver for a few years, and she's good. She's cancer free now, and she's living her best life, and I'm so proud of her. But it's a lot of work to be that person that someone's depending on you for. So having an outlet, it's so good.
Yes.
And many of us, our outlets are whatever. You took this outlet to like the max, and it's a really ambitious goal that you set for yourself.
Well, thank Thank you. But let
Yeah.
me just say really quickly, I'm so glad your mother's okay. I love to hear a good ending to these stories because so often we all just share a bad ending. And so I'm so happy your mother's
Oh,
okay.
thank you so much. I'll be sure and share that with her. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, so how many miles? So you're doing 120 miles a week. Are
Yes.
you like setting a goal for yourself to run every single day?
Well, not really. So when I was actually training for the teams, I was doing 126 days a week. And I really tried to always take Sunday off because, I needed a full rest day, not as much physically as mentally. I just needed a day of nothing. With this project, it was a little looser because I really didn't know exactly when I was going to be able to get it done. So I didn't have any limits on that. There were days, I don't know if you had seen any of my posts, but there were days where I was doing 35 because I knew the next day I was only going to get 15. So when I could, if I had a bigger block of time, I just did as many miles as I could. And trust me, there was no speed work. I did hill work only because I enjoy it, not because it was necessary. But a lot of my miles, I mean, if you had seen me, you wouldn't even think I was actually running. I mean, I did a lot of walking. I did a lot of, shuffling. I was just tracking the miles. That's all I cared about. So it just really depended on the day. It also depended on how I felt, how I slept. And I just tried to really be kind of organic with it. If I had time, I did more. If I didn't have time, I did fewer, and I did not stress about it.
So when you set this goal for yourself, did you make an announcement to like the world, like I'm doing this and this is what I'm going to do, or were you pretty quiet about it? Like I'm using the down low and just like whoever finds out, they find out, but this is what I'm going to do.
Well, so I don't know how to characterize it. I pinned it on Twitter on January 1st. But again, that was more for me. And I didn't have a bunch of followers at that point. So it didn't really, I was really just putting it into the void. And because I didn't want to have to backdate it. So I put it on the 1st. I did 30 miles with my son on January 1st as our kind of New Year's Day. Let's go out and do miles. He's also a runner. And so that just set me up to then tweet every day about it.
Well, I'm glad that your son's a runner because that would be one hell of a ask to make. Like, son, we're gonna do 30 miles. What? We're gonna what?
Yeah. No. He's done a 50 miler. He's done several marathons, so he was okay. He actually
Holy moly!
it, I think, so
all right,
it all worked out.
Apple tree situation here. I love,
Yes,
and then
yes.
what a great bond and a great way to start this event out for yourself. Consistency in life, they sometimes don't agree with each other.
Yes.
And so like, did that ever kind of pop up for you where you thought, oh man, I don't know if I can get my miles in. This is really going to delay things for me. And did you set like a time limit for yourself in terms of when you wanted to finish it?
Well, I didn't really. There were some times that were stressful. Like I got COVID. I went to the Dome and got COVID in the middle of that. And like, not only did I not reach my goal, which I had kind of put into my mileage count, but then I was out for a long time after. So like
Yeah.
those kind of things actually caused me some stress.
Oh, before you continue, I'm sorry to interrupt, but for folks who aren't in the know, could you tell us what is the Dome?
So the Dome is a race in Milwaukee. It's 6 days in the Dome, and it was started by Joe Fegis and I believe Gary Cantrell and maybe Ray Kay. I can't remember who were the original guys that started it, but now it's I'm trying to remember who all's involved, but the ownership has changed hands. It's now in Milwaukee. It was started in Alaska, and it's a 6-day race. And they have shorter races too. They have a 24, 100 miler, a 48. And I was doing the 6-day, and it's inside an ice rink on a track.
Oh boy. Okay, we're gonna I hear you folks. We're gonna get into that later, but we want to get through this part first. Okay, so it's COVID, you got COVID, you're at the Dome, and then what goes on?
So I basically had to stop at 200 miles and came home, and then I can't even remember. I think I might have had to take 10 days off. I was super fatigued. And I really didn't want to end the project simply because I was an idiot. So I waited and then kind of got back to it, and was able to regroup. And then because of that, though, it really got me focused on, I need to be prepared going into the holidays. Everyone gets sick. my 89-year-old father is still alive and alone, and I'm still helping with him, not to the extent of my mother, but I'm still helping. So I just wanted to be prepared. So my goal was to be done by the end of November. And then that's when I really just focused, and I'm just going to do miles whenever and however I can get them done, because I need to finish this.
Did doubt ever enter the equation when you're going through this, or you thought, oh, I don't know if I've got it, what it takes to finish this thing?
Physically, no, only because I really allowed myself some latitude on how the miles got done. Again, I wasn't going out and going, oh my gosh, I've got to do a 7-minute mile every mile. I really was very just relaxed about, as long as I was putting one foot in front of the other, the pace was irrelevant. So that helped on taking the pressure off of how it had to get done and whether or not I was going to end up injured. There was always doubt about getting sick. I think we're a little more concerned these days about how, we can end up with something we were unprepared for. So sickness a little bit, but mostly it was time. I was only really concerned about the time, because you just don't know. A year is a long time to assume nothing's going to happen that's going to prevent you from finishing something. And since it ended up becoming more public than I had anticipated, I didn't want it to be something that I put it out there and then just bailed on.
So so it's a week after week. So that's a lot of miles. I know that's something that you're used to in your training as a 24-hour runner, but for that amount of length of time, it's a lot for anybody. So how are you taking care of your body other than just getting rest? And also fuel. My God, you're burning a lot of calories a week. So how are you balancing all of that?
I just tried to be really, this is, a catchphrase, a catchword today, mindful, but it's very true. I just tried to be really aware. If I felt great, I would allow myself to do more hill work, more kind of journey running, where, I was starting on one side of the town and ran to the other side of the town with a vest, a hydration vest, rather than just loops. But if I was tired, I just really allowed myself, I'd go to I'd park at a park, have my car there, so I had water and, whatever I needed. And I would do loops so that at any point, if I needed to kind of call it, I could, and I could go home and rest. I also was really, and I learned this when I was training for the teams, I don't do a lot of big bulk running. I do, no more than 10 at a time, unless I'm doing an intentional long run. So a lot of my runs were 6 miles, 4 miles, 5 miles. I was just getting them in. And then I always had a period of recovery after. So I was never really going over that edge.
Okay. So, did you experience any other challenges during this project that just were kind of like that sidelining you, whatever? Like, were you injury free this entire time?
I was injury free, except that I had been struggling with, and this had nothing to do with the project. This is probably just, it's a combination of genetics. My brother has the same problem. He's a runner also, but also just, years and years of high mileage. I have osteoarthritis in my right knee, and I, of course, ignored it, how we are. And I just let it go a long time. And finally I had an appointment with a Mayo Clinic doctor, and he just said, you got to do something or you're going to end up needing a knee replacement. So this Friday that just passed, I actually had I wanted to wait for the project because you have to take time off. I had my first hyaluronic acid gel injection 2 days ago. So I'm waiting to see, I'm hoping that helps. And because I'm not going to stop running. So, I hate to admit that, but I feel like on this podcast, I can say that. So.
Okay. I just hear people typing on the keyboards like what? Gel? Hyaluronic gel. What is that? And what does it do?
So I don't know really what it is. Actually, I just had to look it up because I need to know what it was. But they're injecting a type of gel into your knee that provides cushioning in the joint if you have arthritis.
Does it work?
It depends. It depends on the person. It depends on, I'm guessing for people that run a lot, it probably doesn't work as well as you would like it to, but it's better than a knee replacement. And apparently it prolongs your need to stop doing whatever. It keeps you from having to stop early, and hopefully, preclude you from having to get a knee replacement.
This is news we can use, because, we, as endurance runner, we do endure. And that's what you did for so long, is like, oh, I'm going to deal with this pain. It's just like, if a bone's not sticking out, I'm going. So bye.
Exactly. Yes, we've all been there. So, I probably waited too long. So I would like to throw it out there that maybe don't wait as long as I did, but I needed to get through the project. So you asked about like impediments. That would be one. I did put off some medical treatment I needed in order to finish.
So, what you did is so inspiring. And because we all, like, every one of us on this planet, we all have something that that's hard. Like, we have our own way of dealing with it. And for you, it's for running. For others, it's, I don't know, painting, art, name it, writing, journaling. But so, my hope would be that you've inspired someone to create a challenge for themselves to process what the stuff is. When I went through my thing, it was a lot of running just to process all that stuff. And so what advice would you give to someone who wants to set a lofty goal for themselves?
I think it's just to make sure it's organic, that it's something you genuinely want to do. I think we often see other people doing things that look cool, but it's not really something we are, passionate about or really engaged with. Because it'll be really fun for the first 6 weeks, and then it'll be not fun if you didn't really want to do it. It's a little bit like running a 100-miler or something. The only way you're going to finish it is if you actually want to do it, because it is never fun for anyone after mile 70 ever. So that's the same with this project. At some point, it's just a job. So if you are not fully invested in whatever the activity is, you're not going to make it to the end. So I would just say, make sure it's organic, make sure it's something like you said, painting or writing, write, 2 pages a day for a year and post it. So you have, it's actually your project, or however many words. That would be my only real advice, is just, you got to really want to do it, because a year or however long, whatever the time period is, you're committed to that, not because of other people, but because of yourself.
Right. Yeah. You got to be the why. You have to be the why that gets you out. So were there times when you were like looking at your shoes and thinking, oh man, I really don't want to do this today. I mean, my heart's in the right place. I want to do this, but not today. Not today.
Yes. And so maybe that would be my second piece of advice. I did have built in, like I said, I did not, if I had made it an all or nothing or a perfection project, it would have never gotten done. I had a lot of built in, okay, as long as I'm outside or on my treadmill moving, I'm not going to be wound up about what the pace is or how I look to other people. It's truly going to be my project. And as long as I'm moving, it counts.
Did you have a mantra for yourself to get you through this?
No, just don't stop,
Don't stop.
Keep going. Just, and a lot of it was really almost autopilot. I'd committed to it. I was going to finish it. And again, not making it a perfection thing, just making it a show up every day. You get 90% of the battle won just by showing up. So I just made sure every morning, 4:00, the alarm went off and I got up and put my clothes on and my shoes on and went outside. And that solved a lot of the problem. Well,
or in some cases, Crocs. I saw that you did 20 miles on a treadmill in your Crocs. Is that true?
I did, because I went to Fat Ox December 2nd. And
what's Fat Ox? Is that a restaurant? That sounds great. Let's go.
Yeah, I wish it had been a restaurant. No, it's a race in Phoenix. It's one of the Aravipa runs, and it was supposed to be a 48-hour. I was just gonna, I just finished my project. I thought it'd be a nice kind of wind down, and it started raining, like raining in Phoenix, which is bizarre. 24 hours worth of rain, course flooded. I mean, it was freezing, and so I ended up just deciding to finish, just do 100, run, finish it, be done. And so by the time I got home, because I never changed my clothes or my shoes, I had huge blisters on my heels. And so when I got back, I like to kind of do a shakeout run, when I get home. And I couldn't do that in tennis shoes because I could not get my feet in my shoes. So I did them in Crocs.
Oh no, but the Crocs were okay.
Yeah, because they don't have the backs. I put the little band up and put my feet in like slides and ran like that. So
Our one of our teenagers, he wears Crocs all the time and he
Yeah.
loves them. And I think Crocs are like one of the like a perfect shoe to take with you when you go backpacking, whatever. They're so light, they're so comfortable. But when he decides to wear them out in public, I'll tell
Yeah.
them that, hey, buddy, those holes in your Croc, that's where your dignity comes out.
Yes. And I agree. These are actually my son's Crocs that he
They
left.
are.
And I'm running in them. Thank goodness he had them when he was younger and they fit me. But no, I agree with you. They are not attractive at all, but they are so comfortable.
They
and
are
they're actually surprisingly good for running. You would be shocked. They have an arch. They're very solidly cushioned, not the super cushion, but really cushioned. It's almost like wearing a Hoka, but loose.
Crocs, if you're looking for a new ambassador and get into the ultra market, I think we have your person.
I think the problem is I just called him ugly. So sorry, Crocs, take it back.
Take it back, Crocs. Hey, no, you're this great. The holes is where your power comes out or your whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
So you started the run with your son on J1.
Yes.
How did you finish?
With a whimper. No, I knew I was going to Fat Ox. And so I wanted to, and I was driving. So I finished and just got it done, had a cake. We did a little kind of personal celebration, had a cake. And then we went to Phoenix. And the plan was finish up, have a nice, fun celebration in Phoenix, not knowing there was going to be a huge storm the whole time. So by the time we were done, by the time I was done, we went back to the hotel. My husband had got me a bottle of champagne and a big steak dinner, opened everything. We laid it out on towels on the bed and turned the TV on. And like, we were just going to eat and watch TV. I was already showered in my pajamas. I fell asleep with a fork like this to my mouth. I had like 3 bites. I'd had no champagne. My husband had to clear the whole bed, cover me up. I mean, that was the celebration.
That's excellent.
The exhaustion finally took its toll.
Yeah, it did. Oh my gosh. I hope he took a picture of that with your
No, because he knows I'd kill him. No.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. No, there's no evidence of that ever happening as far as all concerned.
In fact, I'm going to deny it after this podcast.
Okay. Sounds good. I want to get into the 24-hour running and your cooking, but because that was always like part of your daily post is that you would post like what you were having for dinner. And your food photography is out of sight. What you cook is out of sight. Mm-hmm. It's all like, I mean, you got the makings of something special going on over there.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, but I want to hear how you got into the running scene. Was athletics always part of your life growing up?
Yes. So I grew up, I was a competitive swimmer starting from the age of 5. And by the time I was 10, I was, training twice a day, morning, after school, on a private traveling team. And I did that up until high school. And I got in a fight with my coach. And you know how 15-year-old girls are. I was like, see ya. And I just got out of the pool and never went back. I mean, it was really, in hindsight, I'm like, ugh, but
wow, drama in the swimming pool.
Yeah,
you went all bye, Felicia, on your coach. Wow.
It was definitely one of those moments in time. Now that I'm significantly older, I'm like, wow, but anyway, I just walked away. And so I started, I ran cross country and taught aerobics in high school and college. I didn't run cross country for college. I ran in college, but I ran cross country in high school and then taught aerobics in both. And so I was always like that, doing all that. And then after I had my kids, I had twins, I picked running back up. Just simply, it was much easier to manage than going to a gym and all of that. So started running again. And quickly realized that because I didn't start again until I was mid-30s, that I was never going to be like really competitive at any like track distance or a 10K. So I pretty quickly figured out, if I want to be competitive at this, I need to really switch to the longer stuff. And luckily, because of having been an athlete my whole life, I kind of came in with a built-in sort of level of endurance that made it a little easier to do that. Whereas I had zero speed, none.
But going from like, you know, I can understand like not doing the 5K, whatever, even the marathon, I would say that's a really good option. But you're like, no, I'm going to go further than that and do this crazy ultra stuff.
Well, I did do 4 marathons first.
You did do 4 marathons first. I thought that's how we all get started. It's the gateway drug of ultra running, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I never even heard of ultras at that point. I did some marathons and thought, this is really fun. I wish it was further.
I wish okay. And, you know, let's go ahead and grant that wish. So how did you learn about ultras, and then how did you make the decision to get into it?
Honestly, I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to remember how I heard about it. I'm not sure how I heard about it, but I was definitely of the era of the Pam Dean feud, public feud on, you know, Outside Magazine, where
can you share with the folks what that is?
Okay, so back in the day, this would have been 2005 or 6. Dean Karnazes and Pam Reed were featured in Outside Magazine as they called her like a desperate housewife stalking him or something. There was some sort of negative connotation about what she was doing versus what he was doing. And they implied that she was only running to chase him, not personally chase him, his records. And they sort of engaged in this who could run further without any sleep. And Outside Magazine featured it on the like cover. It became a huge deal. And instead of taking from that, like, wow, this is weird, I took from that, wow, this is super cool. I want to be one of those people that doesn't sleep and runs all the time. And then in my very first race, I met both of them at Ultracentric. My very first 100, I met both of them at Ultracentric. And it was kind of fun to watch it play out in real time. And I was just sort of hooked. I mean, it was just kind of neat, you know, where else would you get to see that kind of stuff?
Well, nowhere else. I mean, and for that to happen to you in your life, that this is the one thing, like a magazine and this is going on, it's really like, I thought, wow, this is really cool ass shit. And then you go to 100 and they're both there. Yes. Did you know they're going to be there? And 2, like, what was that like for you to see them both there at this hundo?
I had no idea. So I had only run 250s and I decided I wanted to bump up. And Ultracentric was in Grapevine in Texas, and it was a loop. So my biggest fear in those early days was that I was going to die and no one would find me. So I decided to do my first 100 on a loop, where at least if I died, you know, there'd be people around. So and it was a 24-hour race. It wasn't even 100, but I was going to do 100. You know, the goal was to do 124 hours. So I get there and I didn't know anybody, and we just pull up, and you know, I took my kids to every race. So my kids are little and we're just pulled up in our car and, you know, we're oblivious. We don't have any idea what's happening. And we ended up parking next to Connie Gardner and Dean Karnazes. And so talk about an education. Like if you're going to get your first time experience, they both were so incredibly helpful and nice, and their crews were helpful and nice. And I mean, no joke, I had no idea. I mean, I was like, I mean, I just had no clue. So it was really great. And then Pam, I never really got to talk to Pam because she ended up getting hurt and, you know, ended up walking. So I didn't really get a chance to talk to her, but it was a great experience. And talk about, that's why I love ultra running. And I'm assuming it's still the same, but at least then you were parked next to the people that were kind of the big time runners, and they were all nice. Nobody was like, oh, this is your first one, get away from me. They were all helpful and lovely and supportive. And I was hooked. Wow.
That's such a great story. What a great intro to running hundreds. And then when did you discover that you had a real talent for this? Because you can't just like sign up to be on the US 24-hour team if you want to. It doesn't work that way.
Well, it was probably a lot to do with the fact that I was next to Connie and Dean. That very first race, I finished my 100 pretty quickly, and I stopped because that was just the goal. I didn't even know what 24-hour running was. I just thought that was like, hey, we're going to give you 24 hours to do whatever you're going to do. So I didn't know they were running for the team. I didn't understand any of that. So I just stopped, and you know, they came up and said, you know, why are you stopping? You have so much more time left. You need to keep going. And
so they're like, asking you like, hey, new person, what gives? You just kicked ass and you're stopping? Like, you're too good for us?
Keep going. And I'm looking at them like they're lunatics. I'm like, no, and no, and no. And I just packed up my stuff and left. I mean, I was like having no part of whatever that was. But I got home and I kind of started researching it, and I'm like, what are they talking about? I don't understand what's happening here. And that's when I realized there was a team. And I was like, well, that's cool. Like, you get a uniform, you get to go to foreign countries. This seems really awesome. So I'd like to say it was because I was really competitive and into it, but it wasn't. It was because I wanted to get a cool uniform and travel. So
Wow.
I think the next year, so that was in November. And then the next year I focused on that. I made that kind of my goal. And I knew I needed, at that point, the qualifying standard was 125, but you had to be top 3. So I just focused on that, and went the next year and did 127 and made the team. So it was sort of, it was from a lot of factors that didn't have a lot to do with any talent on my part. It was just more that it kind of worked out for me.
Well, I don't know. I don't fully agree with that statement. I mean, you're a 4-time member of that, and it does take talent to be part of that. I mean, that takes a lot of work to be successful at that. So what would you attribute that success to? Like, what part of that did you discover in yourself? Like, I'm really good at this part about this running style, because it's not for everybody, right? It's kind of it's a special breed, I would say.
Yeah, I think the loop thing is a little bit different. I really do enjoy trail running, but kind of 2 issues. One, El Paso's very, very mountainous, but not the smooth kind of mountains, like the rocky. You're just hiking mostly. So we only have 1 trail run here. Everything else is road. So I didn't have any ability to train for trails. And then secondly, I am the most uncoordinated human. I fall down on the road regularly. So there was no way that was going to be part of my story for running. So I was naturally pushed towards road, and that meant a lot of loop running. And I think one thing that maybe people that do those teams have is just the ability to run in circles and not have that be miserable, if that makes sense.
So how do you make that not be miserable? Because a lot of people would think I would go freaking insane, or like the temptation of being able to stop would be so strong. Your car is right over there. Yeah. You can just get in it and never come back, and no one even know. So let's talk about the mentality that you have to have in order to do that. What is it about your makeup that makes you like, yeah, I can do this, or I have the mental fortitude to do that? Because it takes a lot of that.
I think first and foremost would be all the years of swimming, up and down in a pool for multiple hours a day, kind of, I think, starts that ability to just stay in the moment and just keep going. And then I would say the second thing is, surprisingly, would be law school, because law school was sort of an unrelenting, unlike college where you have tests every 3 weeks or so. Law school is a whole semester, and then you take 5 tests at the end of the semester. And if you have not been kind of consistently studying and paying attention and outlining and doing the stuff you need to do, you're going to have a very hard time passing the class at the end, because nobody's monitoring you, nobody cares. And so learning in my first semester of law school was almost a disaster, because I didn't know that. I was like, oh, I'll just go to class, and then at the end I'll start studying, and that doesn't work. So I learned really to every single day sit down and do X amount of work. And that has helped me a lot with loop running and kind of this project of, you just got to do something every day. It doesn't have to be spectacular every day. It just needs to be every day.
Huh. That's really good advice right there. I want to isolate that one. That's really good. I am. So let's talk about your participation on Team USA. So you said you traveled the world wearing, our colors. Your first race, where was that? And then towing the line there, that first race, do you remember that? And what was that experience like?
So that was actually really kind of, it sort of has a special place in my heart, because we went to South Korea and my children were little and we took them. And, talk about like jumping in the deep end of world travel with little kids, because, the subways, we went out, we went to the DMZ, we went everywhere, and none of the signs are in, regular letters that we are used to. It's all in Korean. So you can't even sort of work it out in your brain of like, I think this is saying we need to go here. You have to ask people. We met all kinds of people that were lovely. We went all over the country, on public transportation. We dragged our little kids with us. We got invited by a family to a hockey game because they saw us like looking, and they were so warm. And anyway, it was fantastic. And it set us up for like really being excited about traveling for these teams. And it was in Korea, and it was on a track. And there was just some wonderful people on that team. John Giesler was one of our managers, Roy Perung, Phil McCarthy, Connie, Debbie Horn, a lot of the people that are still in the game, that was the first team, and everyone was so great. People were so nice. And I didn't have a spectacular race. It was only like my third one at that point, my third 24-hour. And I had really, the other one had been kind of a fluke. And so it was sort of just like, okay. And my family, my husband was crewing me, and he didn't really know what to do. And so we were just sort of winging it. And I think I ended up with like 118. I didn't do great, but my goal was at that point just to finish,
Right. Right. Is there a strategy when it comes to running for Team USA, when it comes to 24-hour running, or is it kind of like every person for themselves?
I don't know. It evolved because my four teams were over a course of 10 years. So it evolved. When we first started, it was much more holistic. You took your family, they crewed for you. Everyone was sort of just equal. Later, when Nike took over and we got taken under the umbrella of, USA track and field, we actually had a manager. We had a person that handled Mike Spindler, at least for me. I don't know who's doing it now, but like they would be on the course giving us our splits and our lap count, and they had 2 assistants, and then the manager had assistants, and we had a massage person and a doctor, and we had a whole setup. And so that was significantly different than the first team. So by the end, I don't know what it is now, because it's been, I want to say 8 or 9 years since I've been on a team. So I'm sure it's even more professional. But at the beginning, it was fairly holistic, organic. Now, when I finished, it was much more organized.
For the person at home who is like, I want to get to know more about this 24-hour running, and maybe I want to even try it myself because it sounds like a lot of fun. And like you, if I die, I want to be like, someone can just pick me up right there, just drag me to the ambulance.
Yes.
Like they may lap me a few times to think I'm just sleeping, but actually, no, I'm dead. So
yeah, exactly. And it's possible.
I'm a liability at this point. I don't want you to trip. Yeah. So what advice would you give to someone who's considering a 24-hour run, and then how to get that training up and going?
So I'm sure there's much better advice from people that are involved now, because I'm sure things have really evolved. But from my perspective, I think it really, again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. A lot of it is let people kind of want to start at the end and work back. Like they want to start with speed work, and they want to worry about their pace, and they want to worry about how many laps they can get in X amount of time. And in order to be successful on these teams, if you don't have an incredibly deep base, none of that stuff makes any difference, because in every single one of those races, every person that starts at the front either doesn't finish or finishes at the end. So it's always the people that are conservative at the beginning. And I don't mean they're walking. I'm saying they know their pace that they can maintain, and they just sustain that and possibly get a negative split. Like I know Nick Curry, who just set the American record, he did a negative split when he did it. Like, and we all, not all, I shouldn't say all, a lot of us did that. We had negative splits from our first half of the race to the second half of the race, because it is really about the base that you have. And so I would advise people, if they really think they want to do it, go back to fundamentals, get your long, slow distance miles in, make sure you really have that nailed down. And you need to do whatever you can to stay healthy. And if that means splitting up your runs, like one before work, one at lunch, one when you get home. If you do 3 6-mile runs, you've had 18 miles in that day and you've recovered between all of them. And then later add in some speed work. But don't run all your runs in that gray zone, keep them easy and then do a couple of fast, but stay out of that middle zone, because it's really about being able to run 135, 140, 150 miles in a 24-hour period. It's not about how fast you run the first marathon.
Huh, wow. What's the longest distance you've run in 24 hours?
So mine is not nearly as high as it is now. My highest was 131.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Well, no, the women are running significantly further than that now.
Who's impressing you these days?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, I've been following kind of the situation with Camille at Jackpot, just because I do Jackpot. I like to go to that run.
Yeah, what do you think about that? For folks that don't know, like, well, why don't you explain? You would know better than me because you've been there. Tell folks what happened.
Well, it's the course is, it's a loop for the race that she's in. It's multiple races with multiple kind of versions of the course, but the course she runs, or they run for the 100-mile championships, is a loop. It's on dirt, and it's in a public park, but not your standard grass and whatever. There's a lake, and then there's a kind of a trail situation around it, groomed. And they have cones set out. As you know, when you certify a course, you have to run it exactly as certified, especially when it's something like that, when there's kind of an open area that you could cut a little shorter or go a little wider. So they had cones set up to delineate exactly how the 100 miles needed to go. And they certified it ahead of time. They verified it. During the race, somehow, and there's conflicting stories about how the cones got moved. The cones got moved, and when after a race is over, they have to recertify. They remeasured to recertify, and it was short.
Oh.
I believe, again, don't quote me on this because I'm not sure. I believe it was like 700 yards short, or 700. It was not significantly shorter, but enough to ruin a record.
Yeah.
And because she's sponsored, she gets, bonuses and everything. It actually affects her livelihood that this record is not ratified. So, it became kind of a PR problem in general, because it's so unfortunate. She really, really, really worked hard for that, but it's not a certified course, so they can't ratify it, the record.
Yeah, that is a horribly unfortunate situation, and so bloody unfair.
Yes.
Yeah, my heart just pours out for that. It's devastating.
Yes.
I mean, to have that and given to you and then taken away, and then not having the opportunity to, like, I could have nailed that still. Exactly. Like, I had it in me. I could have done it.
Yes.
Damn it.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Oh boy. Yeah. I would love, well, I don't want to say I would have loved, but it would have been very interesting to hear that conversation when she heard what had happened, when the news was broken to her, and what the reaction was. But oh boy, howdy. Boy.
And a similar thing on that first race I was telling you about at Ultracentric, Connie was going for the US record for the women as well. And the RD told her she had gotten the record, and she stopped, and she was like 50 feet short.
Oh my God.
And she absolutely could have, like, she had time.
Yeah.
So, her record was not ratified, and she did not get the prize money.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like $5,000. And at that point in time, it's like, it was a big prize.
That is a big prize. It's a big prize for anybody. Oh my, anytime. Yeah, but holy moly, but especially then.
Yes.
Ooh. Yes. Types. Wow. Yeah. I mean, folks, the drama of 24-hour running, who knew?
Who knew, exactly. And running in general.
Right, exactly. So the other thing I want to talk to you about, that you are very passionate about, is, if you're watching this on YouTube, this interview, you'll notice behind Carilyn, it's the her cookbooks are on display, and there are many, many, many behind you. So cooking is a big part of your life, and that I understand that you went to cooking school. Is that correct?
Yes, I went to culinary school in Los Angeles. Yes.
Wow. Okay. So tell me more about that. Like, what in cooking school, it's not for everybody. I know a guy who went to the Cordon Bleu culinary academy, and the guy said to the entire class, he's like, this is not for everyone. If you're just a hobbyist, this is not for you. If you're like a fan of like, Food Network, this probably is not for you. A lot of you are going to drop out. And by the end of it, my man Ray was the only person left. The
Wow.
only person left. Everyone else had dropped.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's serious business. I mean, it really is. It's not to be taken lightly. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you. But from your experience, what was that like? Like, why did you go to culinary school, and what do you want to do with that? And what are you doing? I have questions.
Okay, so we were at that point, we were we were commuting to LA for 5 years because my twins were in school out there and they were underage, so um, they couldn't be on campus without an adult living in the city with them. Okay,
Mhm.
so because it wasn't a boarding school situation, so we were commuting to LA, and I was running. At that point, I was only running basically because since we were commuting, I didn't have a second job. And so I thought, I've always loved to cook, and I thought this is my chance. LA is, replete with cooking schools, culinary schools. So I decided let's just do this. So I did that while in between my training. So I was still doing the team. I had 2 more teams while I was in LA, and I went to culinary school in between. So that's how that came about.
And what was that experience like?
I honestly think it was one of the most interesting, best things I've ever done. I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed it. I could not wait to go. I just loved it. I loved every minute of it. There was nothing, I had to drive 2 hours every day to get there. I loved it so much because we lived in Pasadena and I had to get all the way to Culver City. And if you know LA, that's crossing the entire city and in rush hour.
Oof. Oh no, no, thank you. No.
But it was so worth it. It was absolutely worth it. I loved every minute of it. So
And do you want to do you have any ambition to work in a restaurant or even open your own restaurant one day? Or is it just kind of like, no, just a personal growth here. It's what I want to do.
I don't know. I mean, there are days that I think I might, but this year, because of, as we started this interview, the whole process of finishing COVID, all of this stuff in my own life, this year was sort of about let's not give up the running, but let's figure out kind of what to do next, because I'm never going to be professional or competitive again. So do I want to just run for fun? How do I want to do it? The catch with cooking professionally is that is take no prisoners. There is really not a good way to do it successfully if you're not really, it's intense like running. I think
Yeah.
that's why so many athletes end up being chefs, because it's the same sort of level of intensity. So I don't know. I'm kind of, I cook every day. We'll see. I don't know.
How does food how's that incorporate into your life as a runner? Because I'm sure you're here's that word again, mindful, right? That you're mindful about what you're putting in your body. So how's that work out for you?
Well, so I had an eating disorder in high school and college, kind of from all the years of athletics, much like many, young female athletes. So I went through kind of that as well, ended up in kind of some intensive therapy, and was
Was
lucky.
it just you're not getting enough nutrition, no calories, or if you
No,
mind
I
asking?
ended up with bulimia.
Okay.
So, it was kind of that, I had a coach tell me I needed to lose 10 pounds when I was young-ish, not young, but, young enough where you just go, oh, okay. And you start kind of the strict dieting and then you rebound. And anyway, so it kind of set me up on a cycle. By the time I got to college, it had kind of really gotten out of hand. And luckily my mom was, she was a 30-year school teacher. She was pretty on it. And she immediately got me into some really intensive therapy at the University of Indiana. And so I was really lucky to get out of it before it became kind of a lifetime problem. But that made me incredibly mindful of what I ate. And that helped me a lot, especially to the level that I was trained. And I think that has had a big play into why I've never really had any significant injuries in my running career, aside from falling. I have a lot of falling injuries, but I don't have a lot of just sort of chronic, you know, I have torn something because I'm not, you know, my body's broken down. So, and I think that is from having a pretty good understanding of what my body needs to eat. And then as I have kind of shifted, you know, I'm older. I do a lot of intermittent fasting now in order to kind of balance out aging, athletics, and performance.
Wow. Okay. So thanks for answering that question. I would think we're going to take a turn here, folks, into something I wasn't expecting to talk about, if you don't mind. But
Oh no, I'm fine. And I apologize if we went somewhere you don't want to go. I just want to be, you know, transparent about all of it.
no, this is great. No, I'm asking. Yeah, I think this is one. Thank you for being open about this, and I love where the conversation's going. I think it's really important. You know, eating disorders are they're real and they impact so many of us. I know personally, I've got something in my own life that that is along that thread, and it's a struggle. It really is, and it has so many devastating impacts on folks in terms of just their well-being and their mental well-being, their physical well-being. It's all connected, and so I totally understand it. So I really appreciate you sharing your story, and I hope that others can, if they are dealing with an issue, that they get the treatment, and that maybe they'll say, oh, okay, well, I guess it is okay for me to go ahead and seek help. It's okay to ask for help. So it's good to have a conversation. But the one aspect I want to ask you about is the intermittent fasting. That's something I think we're all seeing more and more of. So for folks who aren't in the know, and I think you're doing such a great job of explaining things to us, and which I really appreciate. So what is intermittent fasting, and why does it work for you?
So intermittent fasting, is clinically defined as time restricted eating, meaning you don't eat during certain hours of the day, and then you eat, to satiety during another part of the day. And the theory behind it is that, we aren't meant to have access to food 24 hours a day. It's only kind of in our modern times that we believe that, like, oh, like right now I have a bowl of candy sitting on my desk. So if I turn my computer around, you'd see it. I also have some nuts. Like, theoretically, I could just eat all day. And what I found was, when I was really, really training, kind of the last 5 years of my professional career, I just sort of ate constantly because of all the running. And there's no amount of running you're going to do that is going to outrun just putting food in your mouth constantly. Mm-hmm. And I started getting weird, like some inflammation, just kind of some weird stuff. And I stumbled upon some Tim Noakes. Tim Noakes, Lord of Running, for those who don't know, he's Dr. South America, specializes in runners and running physiology. And he started talking, he was the person, I didn't know this, but he was the person who invented the gel so that runners could have kind of constant and consistent intake of carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates, when they ran. And he developed either pre-diabetes or diabetes. And he got heavy, even though he was running and his diet hadn't changed. And he realized he'd become insulin resistant to some level. And I don't remember exactly how far down that spectrum he went. But he realized that all of that kind of constant ingestion of carbohydrates had kept his insulin elevated. Thus, he was unable to access his fat stores for energy, etc. He went keto. I tried keto. For me, I did not enjoy that. Like, it just was not the food that I like to eat. And through the course of that, I came upon intermittent fasting, read all the studies on it, the autophagy studies where the scientists got the Nobel Prize for, really kind of did deep dive into the science of it, and figured out, for my personality, that sort of block eating works significantly better than trying to be on some sort of restrictive plan, because I love desserts. I bake, like I said, almost every day. I love to cook. So giving myself a window rather than, oh, I have to eat this or I have to eat that. And I just really pay attention. I'm craving a banana today, so I'm going to eat a banana. This evening, I feel like I need a steak. Like, I pay attention to what I need. And if I keep it kind of in the window, it's a lot more manageable than spending all day thinking about, well, what should I have?
So what does, on just to like this week, what is, like today, for instance, what does your plan look like?
So I kind of stick to, it depends. If I'm in a really kind of, a lot more hill work, my runs have been a little more intense. Sometimes I'm running late and I need to do a little more kind of hit workout. I'll do a little more speed work when I'm running. I'll probably open my window at like 18 hours. I fasted for 18 hours. If it's a day that it's, like today, I'm not working out today because of my knee. Um, you know, I probably won't eat till the afternoon just because it's like, you know, there's not really a reason to. And when I race, I've gotten where instead of doing that kind of every 45 minutes, I eat a solid breakfast, like at the hotel before the race starts. And then I will go until lunch and I will not have anything but water and black coffee. And then I will eat a full lunch and then I will go until dinner. And same thing, water and black coffee. And I've just found, because one of the biggest impediments for me with my racing was I was always throwing up by mile 70, always,
Oh,
always, always, always. And once I quit doing the constant ingestion of carbs, that stopped.
no shit.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. What other sort of physical benefits do you think you have acquired since going into intermittent fasting?
Well, so I've done some level of fasting since 2017, and I've done full intermittent fasting since 2019. And I go to Mayo every year for a full physical. And I started doing that back when I was on the team because we had to get a sign off to compete. And my last three physicals, my number, and I'm significantly older, my numbers are so much better than they ever were when I was a professional runner. And my training is not significantly different. So it's not a difference in training. It's truly just that. Like all that inflammation I was talking about is gone. Um, Sleep through the night, no more acid reflux. I have no, other than my wonky knee, which predated any of this, I have no joint problems. I have the same amount of endurance. My heart rate, my resting heart rate used to be, even when I was like fully, engaged in training, my heart rate was in the 60s. My resting heart rate's now in the 40s. My blood pressure, I was always kind of borderline high blood pressure. And they could never explain why. I mean, I have it genetically, so maybe that's it, but my blood pressure is now like 106/68.
Wow.
Everything just really, my last appointment in March at Mayo, the doctor said for the first time on my EKG, they didn't see any inversion, which is not great. They allow it sometimes for high-end athletes because it can be part of that, but I don't have inversion anymore on my EKGs. There's just so many benefits for me. I'm not saying it's for everybody.
Yeah.
I just, you kind of got to trial and error, and people that have had an eating disorder have to be extra careful. This has been incredibly effective for me.
Wow. That is, well, good for you. I mean, and you've put a lot of dedication into yourself, and that takes a lot of work, because some of us, we like to have, like this guy right here, likes to have his head in the sand sometimes, and just like ignorance is truly bliss, where I just don't want to know, or I just don't want to like deprive myself of the things I really enjoy. But
That's why fasting's so great, because honestly, I'm inherently lazy. I mean, I know we're having this conversation,
wait,
but
you're inherently lazy? I'm not getting that.
No, I really am. I mean, the reason fasting is so great for me is that I don't have to think about food until I think about food. And then once I think about food, it's just unlimited, because you're not worrying about like, oh, well, did I eat this earlier? It's like, okay, well, I'm going to eat this because this sounds good.
Yeah.
It was really, honestly, it was the shortcut to be able to eat what I want.
Well, you have inspired me, both to really get back in the kitchen again, and because I love to cook.
Oh, good.
It runs in my blood. Like my grandfather was a butcher. On my dad's side, my mom's side, my grandfather. Get this. I don't think I've ever shared the story before in this podcast. My grandfather grew up dirt poor, in like seriously dirt poor in Mexico. The floor of his house was dirt. He left home and he was going to Baja from Monterey, and he back in those days there was a civil war going on between the Yaqui Indians and the Mexican government. Well, he was taken prisoner by the Yaqui Indians,
Oh my.
And the chief really liked my grandfather for some reason. He had a lot of like Spanish blood in him, so
Mhm.
he was kind of fair complexion, which was different back in those days, especially. So they took him in and they taught him how to cook, how to bake in the adobe ovens. And
Wow.
so they said they released him. He was free, and then he took his knowledge and he worked in a bakery, and then he opened up a bakery in Mexico, and then another one, and then another one, and then
Oh my
like he
God.
made like a small empire for himself.
Wow.
Yeah, no education, but the so being abducted by Indians can be a good thing. That's the moral of the story here.
I was going to take from that being a baker is a good thing.
That too. That too. Yeah, I've got great memories of walking into that bakery, and
Oh,
just the smells of it was just magic. Serious
well,
magic.
one of our runs, we call it the Tour of El Paso. We run down, because I'm right on the border, and we run down, and there's a bakery down right on the border, and it's called Bui Bakery, and they specialize in Mexican pastries. And we run down there, and it's a halfway point, and we always stop, and we get all the Mexican pastries, and then we sit outside in our gross sweaty clothes, and we sit on the ledge, and we just share all the Mexican pastries back and forth, and then we finish our run. And it's like one of my favorite runs because we
Oh,
have a lot of
yeah.
really great Mexican bakeries here. It's delicious. So
Oh
you are a
man.
lucky man.
Yeah. Well, the Mexican pastries and coffee, just like, oh,
Yes.
yes, please, por favor,
Yes.
mas.
Yes. You are
So,
correct.
before I let you go, I want to know what's in store for 2023 for you. Is anything on the docket?
Well, I've kind of come up with several possibilities. I'm really waiting to see how this injection works with my knee, because I don't want to I don't want to have to get a knee replacement. So I'm sort of playing it by ear. They told me it would take about 2 weeks to really have a sense of how well this is going to work. If it works, I plan to do kind of some, maybe another project of some sort, not necessarily just racking up mileage, but actually, commit to some setup runs. If it doesn't work, I may have to go back to swimming and eat crow for having walked off the pool deck when I was 15. So karma may be coming full circle. I don't know.
Your coach is going to show up and just be like swinging his whistle. I knew
Yeah.
you'd be back.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. I may have to go back. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm going to give it a couple of weeks and then see.
Carilyn Johnson, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on hitting your goal. I'm
Thank
so very proud of you. I know your mom would be too.
Thank you. Well, and thank you for following. I mean, you, I saw, when you would like something, and it really, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that people even cared, because it seems so random, but I am very, very grateful. It kept me going that people were paying attention. So thank you. And thank you for having me on your podcast.
Of course. Of course. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you.
It's gonna be great.
Have a great holiday.
I will. And you do too.
Thank you so much.
You got it.
Bye.